Tavion Reed owned the building. Not leased, not managed, owned. Every room, every wall, every tile, on the ballroom floor, where he was now standing. 22 years old, name on the deed, name on the sign, name on the insurance paperwork that sat in a drawer he still opened sometimes just to make sure it was real. On the front desk there was a booking form for Saturday. The client name, Red Hargrove. He had seen it that morning. He had not moved for a long time. 15 years ago. He had been thrown out of this exact room. He was 7. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building on South Halsted Street in Chicago, Unit 309. The kind of building where the buzzer hadn't worked since before Tavion was born, and the mailbox downstairs still had someone else's name taped over theirs because nobody had updated it in 4 years. The kitchen table had 3 chairs because the 4th one had been broken since March, and replacing a chair costs $12 they didn't have. Gloria Reed worked 6 days a week cleaning the Hargrove house on the North Shore, a house with more bathrooms than their apartment had rooms. She left at 6:15 every morning and came back at 4:30 every afternoon, smelling like lemon cleaner and other people's laundry. Tavion was 7. He had been invited to Celeste Hargrove's 8th birthday party. The invitation had come home in Gloria's bag folded between a grocery list and a bus transfer. It was printed on cardstock, thick and smooth. The kind of paper that felt like it cost more than their electricity bill. Tavion had held it with both hands and read it twice. Gloria ironed his shirt that Saturday morning. Then she ironed it again because the collar wasn't sitting right. She cut his hair in the kitchen with the clippers she kept in the drawer next to the stove. Lined him up, careful, turning his head left, then right, checking the edges. The way she checked everything, like the details were the difference between being ready and being almost ready, and almost was not something she allowed. He had made Celeste a card, drew it himself, spent the whole week on it every night after dinner at that 3-chair table with his colored pencils and a piece of white paper he had taken from school. The drawing was him and Celeste in the backyard of the Hargrove house, the big one with the swing set and the oak tree that dropped acorns in September. They were holding hands in the picture, because that's what they did when Gloria was cleaning and nobody was watching. They played. They were friends in the way that only children can be friends before the world starts sorting people into categories they didn't ask to be placed in. He didn't have wrapping paper. Gloria looked through the apartment for something. A gift bag, tissue paper, anything. There was nothing. She found a section of the Sunday Tribune on the counter and folded it around the card neat and tight, taped the edges with the clear tape from the junk drawer. Tavion thought it looked fine. He didn't know it wasn't supposed to look like that. Gloria knelt in front of him at the door. She straightened his collar one more time. She said, "You say thank you. You say please. You don't touch anything you're not supposed to." She said it with love, but underneath the love, there was something else. A tightness. A knowing. She knew whose house this party was in. She knew what the other children would look like, and what they would be wearing, and what their gifts would be wrapped in. She knew the distance between that room and this apartment, and she was sending her son across it with a card wrapped in newspaper and a shirt she had ironed twice. She put him on the bus, rode with him to the venue. It was a place called Lakeview Hall on North Sheridan Road. White stone, tall windows. The kind of building that had a doorman and a coat check and flowers in the lobby that got replaced every Tuesday whether they needed it or not. Tavion walked in, and everything was bigger than anything he had ever seen. The ceiling was higher than his entire apartment. The balloons were not the kind you blow up yourself. They were the kind that float, dozens of them, silver and pink, tied to the backs of chairs with ribbon. There was a table just for presents. Just for presents. A whole table. He had never seen that before. He held his newspaper-wrapped card against his chest and looked around the room the way a boy looks at the ocean for the first time. Not scared, just aware suddenly that the world was much larger than he had been told. Gloria watched him walk through the door. She did not go in with him. The invitation was for children only. She would be in the kitchen helping set up the way she always was, present but not visible. She watched him disappear into that room full of light and silver balloons, and children who belonged there without thinking about it. Then she turned and walked toward the back entrance. The one for staff. The ballroom had 23 children in it. Tavion knew 2 of them, Celeste because they played together at the house, and a boy named Derek who sat near the coat rack and didn't talk to anyone. The other 21 were strangers. They moved through the room like they had been in rooms like this before, which they had. Tavion stood near the door for a moment. He looked at the present table. The gifts were stacked in neat rows, glossy paper, bows, bags with tissue paper coming out the top like little explosions of color. He looked down at the newspaper in his hands. He didn't feel shame. Not yet. He was 7, and he didn't know that what he was holding was supposed to make him feel less than. He just thought it was a card for his friend. He walked to the table. He put it down. The newspaper sat between 2 gift bags from a store he had never been inside. It looked different. He noticed that. But he didn't understand what the difference meant. Not yet. Celeste found him. She ran over the way she always did when they were in the backyard, fast, happy, not thinking about who was watching. She said, "Tay, you came." She was wearing a pink dress with a ribbon in her hair and shoes that looked brand new. He said, "Happy birthday." He pointed at the table. "I made you something." She went to the table. She picked up the newspaper-wrapped card. She started to open it. The tape came off easy. The newspaper unfolded. A boy standing behind her, one of the 21, leaned over and said, "Is that newspaper?" He didn't say it mean. He said it curious. The way children say things before they learn that curiosity and cruelty can sound exactly the same. Another kid looked. Then another. Someone laughed. Not loud, just a short sound. But it moved through the room the way small sounds do in big spaces. It carried. Celeste was holding the card now, the drawing of the 2 of them in the backyard. She looked at it. Then she looked around the room. She saw the other children looking. She saw what they were seeing. The newspaper, the tape, the colored pencil drawing, instead of a store-bought gift. Something shifted in her face. Not cruelty. Something worse. Embarrassment. The kind that makes children do things they would not do if they were alone. She put the card down on the table. She didn't say anything about the drawing. She didn't say anything at all. She just put it down and stepped back from it the way you step back from something you don't want to be associated with. Tavion watched her do it. He didn't understand yet, but he felt it, something in his chest that he didn't have a word for. Then Patricia Hargrove was there. She had been standing near the entrance since Tavion arrived. She had seen the newspaper. She had seen her daughter's face. She walked over now, not fast, calm, composed, smiling even. She put her hand on Tavion's shoulder, the way adults do when they are about to move you somewhere you don't want to go and want it to look gentle. She said, "Sweetheart, I think there's been a little mix-up with the guest list. Why don't I walk you to your mom?" She said it softly. She said it with a smile. She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. And that was the worst part. She didn't yell. She didn't make a scene. She simply decided quietly and completely that this child did not belong in this room. And she removed him from it the way you remove a plate that's been set at the wrong table, politely, efficiently, without ever raising her voice. Tavion looked at Celeste. Celeste did not look back. The card was still on the table, the drawing of the 2 of them holding hands in the backyard. It was already being covered by another gift bag someone had placed on top of it. Patricia walked him through the ballroom, not toward the front door, toward the kitchen, the back way, the way you take someone out when you don't want the other guests to notice they were ever there. He walked through the kitchen door. Gloria was standing at the sink. Her hands were wet. She was holding a serving plate. She looked up and saw her son walking toward her with Patricia Hargrove's hand on his shoulder. Gloria's face did something very still. She set the plate down. She dried her hands on the towel hanging from the oven handle. She didn't ask what happened. She already knew. The way mothers know. The way women who clean other people's houses have always known. "Patricia," said Gloria, "I think Tavion might be more comfortable waiting with you back here." She said it like she was doing them a favor. Then she turned and walked back through the kitchen door into the ballroom. The door swung shut behind her. Tavion stood next to his mother. He said, "Mama, can I go back in?" Gloria looked at the door. Then she looked at her son. She said, "No, baby, we're gonna go home." He looked at Celeste. She looked away. He walked out. The door closed. They rode the bus home in silence. 47 minutes on the number 8 from Sheridan to Halstead. Gloria sat with her hands folded in her lap. Tavion sat next to her with his feet not quite reaching the floor. Neither of them spoke. Not one word for 47 minutes. The bus moved through the city, and the city moved past the windows, and neither of them looked at it. When they got home, Gloria hung up her coat. She put water on for tea. She moved through the kitchen the way she always did, quiet and precise, except her hands were slower than usual. Tavion sat at the table, the 3-chair table. He sat in his chair, the one closest to the window, and he said, "Mom, did I do something wrong?" Gloria stopped. Her back was to him. She was facing the stove. The water wasn't boiling yet. She stood there for a long moment. The kind of moment where a mother has to decide what to say to a child who has just been shown something about the world that she had been trying to protect him from for 7 years. She turned around. She said, "You did nothing wrong, baby. Not one thing." She said it firm. She said it clear. She said it looking right at him so he would know she meant it. Then she turned back to the stove and finished making the tea, and didn't say anything else about it that night. 1 week later, Gloria was let go from the Hargrove house. The letter said household restructuring. It said the family was simplifying their staffing needs. It said thank you for your years of dedicated service. It did not say anything about a birthday party, or a boy wrapped in newspaper, or a kitchen door that swung shut. It didn't need to. Gloria had worked for the Hargroves for 4 years and 11 months. She was let go 8 days after the party. The math was not complicated. She didn't tell Tavion right away. She got up the next morning at 6:15 like she always did. She got dressed, she left the apartment. She rode the bus to the North Shore and sat in a coffee shop for 9 hours, then rode the bus home at 4:30. She did this for 3 days before Tavion noticed she wasn't bringing home the smell of lemon cleaner anymore. He was 7, but 7 is not stupid. 7 is just small. He woke up one night, a Tuesday, 2:14 in the morning. The apartment was dark except for the kitchen light. He walked out of his room and found Gloria sitting at the table, the 3-chair table. Her head was down. Her shoulders were doing something he had never seen them do, moving in a way that wasn't regular. Small, tight movements, the kind that come from somewhere deep. He stood in the hallway and watched and understood in the way that children understand, that his mother was crying. He had never seen her cry before, not once, not when the heat went out, not when the rent was late, not when she worked 16 hours and came home and still had to make dinner. Never. He walked to the table. He sat down in his chair. He didn't say anything. He just sat there. After a while, Gloria lifted her head. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. She looked at him the way she always looked at him. Straight on. No softening. She said, "Tavion, I want you to remember something," she said. "You remember how you felt tonight, and you make sure. When you have your own house, your own table, your own door, you make sure no one who walks through it ever feels the way you felt in that room." He was 7. He didn't understand all of it. He understood the feeling part. He understood the door part. The rest, the part about having his own house, his own table, that was abstract, that was future. That was a thing he couldn't picture yet, because the only table he knew had 3 chairs, and the only door he knew was the one on Unit 309 that stuck in the humidity. He didn't understand it then. He would, but not for a long time. Gloria found new work within 2 weeks. Not one job, 2. Daytime she did laundry and pressing at a cleaner's on 47th Street, 6 days a week, 5 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon. Nighttime she cleaned offices in a building downtown 6 in the evening until 11, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. Tavion did the math once years later. His mother was awake and working or commuting for 19 hours a day. She slept 5. She did this for 3 years before it became 4. And then it was just how things were. Tavion learned to take care of himself. Not because anyone told him to, because the apartment was empty from 3:30 in the afternoon until 11 at night, and someone had to. He made rice at 9 years old, standing on a chair to reach the stove, because he hadn't had his growth spurt yet. He did his homework at the 3-chair table. He washed his own clothes in the bathtub on Wednesdays, because the laundromat cost $2.25 a load, and that was bread money. At school, he didn't tell anyone about the birthday party. He never said Celeste's name. He never said Hargrove. But something had changed in him. Before the party, Tavion was the kind of kid who walked into rooms first, loud, open, ready. After the party, he became the kind of kid who watched rooms before entering them. He stood in doorways. He looked at where people were sitting, who was talking to who, where the edges of the room were. He mapped the space before he stepped into it, the way someone does when they've learned that not every room wants them in it. He started collecting newspaper. Not on purpose, not at first. It just accumulated. Gloria would bring the Tribune home from the office building and leave it on the counter, and Tavion would fold it and put it in a stack by the refrigerator. He didn't throw it away. He didn't use it for anything. He just kept it. It sat there like a thing he wasn't ready to explain even to himself. When he was 9, a boy in his class named Andre had a birthday. Tavion needed to wrap a gift. A small toy car, $2 from the dollar store on Ashland. He had enough money for wrapping paper. Gloria had made sure of that, but he didn't buy it. He took a sheet of newspaper from the stack by the refrigerator and wrapped the car the same way Gloria had wrapped the card 3 years earlier. Neat, tight, clear tape on the edges. Gloria saw him do it. She didn't say anything. She watched him carry it out the door, and she stood at the window and watched him walk down South Halsted toward Andre's building with a newspaper-wrapped gift in his hands. She understood something in that moment, even if she couldn't say it out loud. He wasn't hiding. He was refusing to hide. It was the first time he made a choice about who he was going to be, even if he couldn't have explained it that way at 9. He gave Andre the gift. Andre said cool car. Nobody said anything about the newspaper. Tavion sat at the party and ate cake and came home. That was it. But it wasn't nothing. It was a boy deciding quietly that the thing that had been used to make him feel small was not going to have that power anymore. Not if he held it himself. His teacher noticed him that year. Mrs. Dolores, 4th grade. She was a woman who had been teaching on the South Side for 22 years and had seen every kind of child there was to see, and Tavion was a kind she didn't see often. Quiet, but not shy. Observant, but not withdrawn. She told Gloria at parent-teacher conference, "Your son watches people the way chefs watch fire. Carefully, like he's learning something. Nobody taught him to learn." Gloria kept that sentence. She didn't write it down. She didn't need to. She carried it the way she carried most things. Silently close, in a place where it couldn't be taken from her. The years moved the way years do when you're growing up in an apartment on South Halsted, slowly when you're in them, fast when you look back. Tavion turned 10, then 11, then 12. The apartment stayed the same. 3 chairs. The buzzer that didn't work. The stack of newspapers by the refrigerator that grew and shrank and grew again. Gloria worked. Tavion watched. And somewhere, in the quiet daily mechanics of a life that nobody was paying attention to, a boy was becoming someone. Not all at once. Not in a single moment. The way most people become who they are, one ordinary day after another, until the ordinary adds up to something that isn't ordinary at all. When Tavion was 13, Gloria picked up a 3rd shift, cleaning at a restaurant on MLK Boulevard called Odell's. It was a small place. 14 tables. A counter with 6 stools. The kind of restaurant that had been on the same block so long that people gave directions using it as a landmark. Turn left at Odell's. 2 blocks past Odell's. It had been there since 1982, and it looked like it had been there since 1982. The sign out front had been repainted twice. The booths had been reupholstered once. The floor had never been replaced. Gloria worked the closing shift, 9 at night until midnight, scrubbing the kitchen, mopping the floors, wiping down every surface until Mr. Odell could run his hand across the counter and nod. On the nights when there was nobody to watch Tavion, which was most nights he came with her, he sat at the back table near the kitchen door with his homework spread out and a glass of water that Mr. Odell refilled without being asked. He started watching. Not the homework, the restaurant, the way the kitchen moved, the way the front of house worked, the way Mr. Odell greeted people when they walked in, not with a script, not with that corporate voice that sounds like it was learned in a training video, with his actual voice, his actual name. "Hey Curtis, how's that knee doing? Mrs. Patterson, I saved you the corner booth." He knew them. He remembered them. He made the room feel like it had been waiting for them to arrive. One evening, a Thursday, a family came in. A man, a woman, a little girl about 6 or 7. They weren't dressed up. The man's jacket had a patch on the elbow. The woman's shoes were practical in the way that said comfort mattered more than appearance. The little girl was wearing a school uniform she hadn't changed out of. They sat down at table 9. Mr. Odell came out from behind the counter himself. He pulled the chair out for the little girl. He said, "And what's your name, young lady?" She said, "Kayla." He said, "Well, Kayla, you picked the best table in the house." He poured water for the parents. He brought crayons and a paper placemat for the girl without anyone asking. Tavion watched from the back table. He watched Kayla color on the placemat with her tongue sticking out the way kids do when they're concentrating. He watched her parents lean back in their chairs, like they had set something heavy down. He watched the room hold them. That was the word for it, even if he didn't know it yet. The room held them. It made space for them. It said without saying it, "You belong here." He thought about the ballroom on North Sheridan Road, the silver balloons, the kitchen door swinging shut behind him. He thought about what that room had said to him. It had said the opposite. He didn't know the word for it then. Hospitality. The art of making someone feel like they belong in a room they walked into. He just knew what it looked like when it was there, and he knew with absolute clarity what it looked like when it was missing. He started helping. Small things first. Clearing plates after close, stacking chairs, wiping menus. Nobody asked him to. Nobody paid him. He just started doing it. Then he started doing it during service, bussing tables between homework problems, refilling water glasses, folding napkins into the triangle the way Mr. Odell liked them. Gloria noticed. She told him to focus on school. He said he was focusing on school. She looked at his grades. They hadn't dropped. She looked at his face. It was the first time she had seen something in it that she hadn't seen in years. Not happiness exactly, purpose. The particular energy of a person who has found the thing they want to do before they can explain why they want to do it. She let him stay. Mr. Odell Washington was 63 years old. He had opened the restaurant with $4,000 a used stove and a lease he signed without a lawyer because he couldn't afford one. 40 years later, the restaurant was still open. It had never been profitable enough to expand. It had never been unprofitable enough to close. It existed in that narrow middle ground where small businesses live when the owner refuses to quit and the neighborhood refuses to let it die. He wore the same pair of leather shoes every day. Brown, resoled 3 times. The cobbler on 51st Street knew the shoes by sight. Mr. Odell ironed his apron every morning before opening. It was a plain white apron. Nothing on it, no logo, no name. But he ironed it like it was a uniform because to him it was. He said once to no one in particular that a man who doesn't respect his own tools doesn't respect his own work. Tavion heard him say it. He filed it away the way he filed everything Mr. Odell said, quietly, permanently. Mr. Odell noticed Tavion the way you notice someone who does a thing slightly differently than everyone else. It wasn't the speed, it wasn't the effort, it was the order. Tavion didn't just wipe a table. He looked at the chair first, checked if it was straight, pushed it in if it wasn't, then wiped the table, then checked the salt and pepper, then the napkin holder. Every time, same sequence, same care. Mr. Odell told Gloria one evening while she was mopping the back hallway, "Your boy doesn't just clean the table. He looks at the chair, checks if it's straight, then wipes the table. That's not cleaning. That's hosting." Gloria didn't say anything. She kept mopping, But she slowed down for a moment the way you slow down when something someone said needs a second to land. Mr. Odell started teaching Tavion. Not formally. There was no announcement, no sit-down conversation about mentorship. It was just, "Come here, let me show you something." That was always how it started. "Come here, let me show you." How to dice an onion so the pieces are even. How to season cast iron so it lasts 50 years. How to tell when a customer needs their check without them having to ask. The small things, the invisible things. The things that make a place feel like it's being run by someone who cares, even if you can't point to exactly what they're doing differently. Then, the bigger things. Mr. Odell showed him the books, the actual numbers, revenue and expenses, and the line between them that was thinner than most people realized. He said, "A restaurant doesn't die because the food is bad. A restaurant dies because the owner doesn't know the difference between revenue and profit." He pointed at a column in the ledger. "That's what came in last month. Looks good, right?" Tavion nodded. Mr. Odell pointed at another column. "That's what went out. Rent, food cost, gas, electric, labor, insurance." He drew a line under the bottom number. "That's what's left. That's the real number. You learn to love that number or you go under." He taught him food cost percentage. 30 cents of every dollar should go to ingredients, no more. He taught him the 60-40 rule. 60% of your revenue covers fixed costs. 40% covers everything else, including whether you eat that month. He taught him that labor is the cost most owners get wrong because they either hire too many people or they burn out the ones they have, and both end the same way. He also taught him something that wasn't in any ledger. He said it one night while they were closing up. Tavion was 15. Mr. Odell was wiping down the counter slow and deliberate the way he did everything. He said, "Every person who walks through that door is spending something they worked for. Could be $5, could be 50, doesn't matter. They earned it, and they chose to spend it here. You respect that. You respect them. Always." Tavion heard it. And underneath it, he heard his mother's voice. Different words, same instruction. The kitchen on South Halsted, the 3-chair table. You make sure no one who walks through it ever feels that way. He didn't say anything about it. He just kept wiping the counter. But the two sentences sat next to each other in his mind, the way two notes sit next to each other in a chord, separate, but making something together that neither one makes alone. There is a thing that happens in the hospitality industry that most people outside of it don't know. The thing that determines whether a customer comes back is not the food. It is not the price. It is not the ambiance or the music or the thread count of the napkins. It is whether they felt respected. Studies have shown, and this is real, that 68% of customers who leave a business and never return do so because they felt the staff was indifferent to them. Not rude, indifferent. The absence of hostility is not the same as the presence of welcome. Most businesses understand the first part. Very few understand the second. Tavion learned this not from a textbook. He learned it from watching Mr. Odell for 3 years. He learned it from watching who came back and who didn't, and noticing that the ones who came back were not always the ones who got the best meal. They were the ones who got remembered. The ones Mr. Odell called by name. The ones whose regular order he started making before they sat down. The ones who walked in and felt before a single word was spoken that the room had been expecting them. He also learned something else during those years, something harder. He started reading, not for school, for himself. Books about business, books about economics, books about systems. And in the middle of all that reading, he came across a study about how children learn social hierarchy. The research was clear. Children are not born knowing who belongs in a room and who doesn't. They learn it. They absorb it from the adults around them, from the structures they grow up inside. From 1,000 small signals that say, without ever being spoken aloud, this person matters and this person doesn't. Celeste Hargrove was 8 years old at that birthday party. She was not cruel. She was a child, responding to a system she had been placed inside before she was old enough to understand it. She looked away from Tavion not because she wanted to, but because the room had already told her that was what she was supposed to do. That didn't make it hurt less, but it made it make sense, And for Tavion, making sense of a thing was the first step toward building something better than it. He was reading about systems, but he was thinking about a room he'd been walked out of. The event venue industry, he learned, operates on margins between 15 and 25%. Thin. The rent is fixed, the insurance is fixed, the staffing costs are semi-fixed. Everything that can go wrong costs money, and most things go wrong eventually. 70% of new venues close within 3 years, not because the owners weren't talented, because the math is unforgiving, and most people don't respect the math until it's too late. Mr. Odell had survived 40 years because he respected the math every single day. Tavion watched and learned and wrote the numbers down in a notebook he kept in his backpack between his calculus homework and a folded piece of newspaper he never threw away. He graduated high school in June, 17th in his class, not first, not close to first, but 17th out of 312 at a Southside public school where graduating at all was the achievement, and 17th was something Gloria put on the refrigerator next to a photo of Tavion at age 4 and the electric bill she had finally paid off in March. He enrolled at Harold Washington Community College that fall. Hospitality management. The tuition was covered partly by a Pell Grant and partly by the money he made working 2 jobs. At Odell's 4 nights a week, 4 in the afternoon until 11, and on weekends, a new job. Cleaning event venues after private parties on the North Shore. The irony was not lost on him. He spent his Saturdays and Sundays in ballrooms and banquet halls that belonged to people who looked like the Hargroves, sweeping confetti off marble floors and folding tablecloths that cost more than his monthly grocery budget. He mopped the same kind of rooms his mother had mopped. He cleared the same kind of tables. He went in through the same back doors. The difference was, he was learning. Every venue he cleaned, he studied. The layout, the lighting, the flow of the room. Where the bar was placed, where the stage was, how the tables were spaced. He was taking notes inside a job that was never designed to teach him anything. His schedule that year looked like this: 6 in the morning venue cleanup on the North Shore, 9 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon classes at Harold Washington, 4 in the afternoon to 11 at night Odell's, sleep from midnight to 5:30, 5.5 hours if the bus was on time, 5 if it wasn't. Terrell came by the restaurant one night. Terrell had grown up 3 blocks from Tavion on South Halstead. Same neighborhood, same schools, same buses. Different choices, the kind that aren't better or worse, just different. Terrell worked at a warehouse on the west side. Steady hours, decent pay. He sat at the counter at Odell's and watched Tavion bus a table, check the chairs, wipe down the menus, refill the napkin holder, and start on the next one without pausing. Terrell said, "Tay, you work more hours than my uncle, who's got 3 kids. For what Tavion set a plate in the bus tray," he said, "for something that's mine." Terrell looked at him for a moment. Then he said, "All right." He finished his water and left. He didn't push it. He knew that tone. It was the same tone Gloria had, the one that meant the conversation was over because the answer had already been given. Tavion transferred to Roosevelt University after 2 years. Hospitality and tourism management. The tuition gap was $23,000 in student loans. He signed the papers in the financial aid office on a Tuesday afternoon and walked out owing more money than Gloria had made in any single year of his childhood. That was real. That number sat in his chest the way real numbers do. Not abstract, heavy, but he kept going. The way his mother kept going. The way Mr. Odell kept going. One day in front of the other. In his junior year, there was an event management course. Professor Haynes. The midterm assignment was to design a complete event layout for a private function. Tavion chose a children's birthday party. He didn't choose it at random. He designed every detail around a single question that he wrote at the top of the page before he started. The question was this: if every child in this room, regardless of where they came from, felt equally welcome, what would the room look like? He designed the table layout so there was no head table, no hierarchy, round tables, same size, same height. He designed the gift area so every present was displayed the same way regardless of size or wrapping. He designed the entrance so there was one door. One door for every guest. No front entrance for some and kitchen entrance for others. One way in, one way out. Equal. Professor Haynes gave him an A. She wrote a note at the bottom of the paper. It said, "This doesn't feel like an assignment. It feels like a promise." Tavion kept that paper. He folded it in half and put it in his backpack next to the notebook and the piece of newspaper. He didn't know it yet, but that assignment was the first blueprint for everything that came after. He graduated on a Saturday in May. Gloria was in the 3rd row. Mr. Odell was in the 5th. Terrell didn't come, but he texted a single word. Proud. Tavion walked across the stage in a cap and gown he had rented for $45 and a pair of dress shoes Gloria had bought him from the thrift store on Cottage Grove. He had a degree in hospitality and tourism management. He had $23,000 in student loan debt. He had a notebook full of numbers and layouts and ideas, and he had 14 applications sitting in the inboxes of venues and hotels and event companies across Chicago. 11 said no. 3 never responded. That was it. That was the math. After 4 years of school and 7 years of learning and a business plan, he had rewritten 9 times, 11 rejections, and 3 silences. He kept the rejection emails in a folder on his laptop, not because he enjoyed reading them, because he wanted to remember what the door looked like before it opened. He got one job, night manager at an event venue on the West Side. Not the position he wanted, not the role he had trained for, not even close to the title on the business card he had imagined during those late nights at Odell's. He was the person who showed up after the guests left. He locked the doors. He checked the thermostats. He supervised the cleaning crew. He filed the incident reports. He made sure the building was ready for the next event by 6 in the morning. The pay was $14.50 an hour. He took it because it was a door, and any door was better than the ones that had stayed shut. One night, a Wednesday in November, he was cleaning up after a children's birthday party. A big one. Rented ballroom, catering, DJ. The kind of party where the parents spend more than Tavion made in a month. The room was empty now, just him and the mess. Balloons deflating slowly on the floor. Confetti ground into the carpet, paper plates with frosting smeared across them. Streamers hanging from the ceiling like things that had given up. He was picking up trash near the gift table when he saw it. A card on the floor, handmade, drawn in crayon, a child's drawing. 2 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. The kind of card a kid makes when they don't know that the world expects something more expensive. He picked it up. He looked at it for a long time. Longer than made sense for a piece of paper on a dirty floor. The crayon lines were uneven, the way crayon lines always are when a child is pressing hard because the drawing matters to them. He stood there, holding it in the empty ballroom, and he thought about a different card. A different drawing. 2 figures in a backyard with a swing set and an oak tree, wrapped in newspaper, left on a table between glossy gift bags. Covered up. Forgotten. He sat down on the edge of the stage. The room was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort you. The kind that just makes everything you're carrying louder. He was 21 years old. He had a degree he was still paying for. A job that started at 10 at night and ended at 6 in the morning. An apartment on West Madison that was smaller than the one on South Halstead, which he hadn't thought was possible. And a feeling he couldn't name, but knew the shape of. The feeling that you are doing everything you were supposed to do, and it is not adding up to anything you were promised it would add up to. He called Gloria. 1:14 in the morning. She picked up on the first ring. She always picked up. Didn't matter what time. Didn't matter if she had a shift at 5. If Tavion called, Gloria answered. That was not a policy. That was a mother. He said, "Ma, am I doing the right thing?" She was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that means someone is thinking. The kind that means someone is choosing their words very carefully because the wrong ones could break something. She said, "Do you remember what I told you?" He closed his eyes. He said, "Make sure no one in my house ever feels that way." She said, "You don't have the house yet, baby, but you will. Keep going." He held the phone against his ear for a moment after she stopped talking. Then he said, "Okay, Ma." She said, "I love you." He said, "I love you too." He hung up. He looked at the card in his other hand, the crayon drawing, the two stick figures. He didn't throw it away. He folded it carefully, the way you fold something that matters, even when you can't explain why it matters, and put it in his back pocket. He didn't know why he kept it. He didn't need to know why. He finished cleaning the ballroom. He locked up. He went home. He slept 4 hours. He got up and did it again. 7 months into the night manager job, Tavian got a call from a broker he had met at an industry mixer on the near West Side. The man's name was Gerald Whitfield. He specialized in commercial real estate for hospitality properties. He had Tavian's number because Tavian had given it to him 3 months earlier with a business card that said Tavian Reed Hospitality Management and nothing else because there was nothing else to put on it yet. Gerald said he had a property, a venue on the north side, North Sheridan Road, old building, white stone, tall windows. The owner had passed away 8 months prior. The children didn't want the business. The property had been sitting on the market for 5 months. There was deferred maintenance, a tax lien. The asking price had been dropped twice. It was now listed at $180,000. Gerald said it was a project, but the bones were good. He said, "I thought of you because you told me you were looking for something with character." Tavian said, "What's the address?" Gerald gave it to him. Tavian wrote it down. He looked at it. He looked at it again. North Sheridan Road. The address was different by 2 digits from the one he remembered. But the building description was the same. White stone, tall windows, ballroom on the 2nd floor. He pulled up the listing online. There were photos, the lobby, the hallway, the main room, the ballroom, where the ceiling was higher than his entire childhood apartment, where the balloons had been silver and pink, where the table had been covered in glossy gift bags, where a woman in a nice dress had put her hand on his shoulder and walked him out through the kitchen because she had decided quietly and completely that he did not belong. He closed the laptop. He sat at his kitchen table. He sat there for 22 minutes without moving. Then he opened the laptop again and started writing. The business plan was 47 pages. He wrote it in 3 weeks. He used every number Mr. Odell had taught him. Food cost percentages, the 60-40 rule, labor ratios, revenue projections based on comparable venues in the Chicago market. He included the event layout from Professor Haynes's class, the one with round tables and one door and no hierarchy. He included his own credit score, which was 681, not great, not disqualifying. He included his savings, $12,000. Everything he had, every dollar from every night shift and every weekend cleanup, and every hour at Odell's that he hadn't spent on rent or loans or bus fare. The building cost $180,000. He had 12. The gap was $168,000. He applied for an SBA loan, Small Business Administration, the kind of loan the government backs for people who have a plan, but not the capital. The application was 31 pages of paperwork. He filled out every line. Mr. Odell co-signed. He didn't hesitate. He read the business plan in one sitting at the counter of the restaurant on a Monday night after closing. He looked at the numbers. He looked at the layout. He looked at the page where Tavian had written his mission statement. 1 sentence. A space where every guest is treated with dignity regardless of who they are or where they come from. Mr. Odell set the paper down. He took off his reading glasses. He said, "Where do I sign?" The loan took 2 months to process. 61 days of waiting. Tavian checked his email 14 times a day. He didn't tell anyone except Gloria and Mr. Odell. Not Terrell. Not his co-workers. He waited the way you wait when everything you've been building toward comes down to whether someone on the other end of a phone line says yes or no. They said yes. On a Thursday. He got the call at 3 in the afternoon. He was asleep because he had worked until 6 that morning. The phone woke him up. A woman from the SBA office said, "Mr. Reed, your loan has been approved." He said, "Thank you." He hung up. He sat on the edge of his bed for a long time. Then he put his shoes on and went to the building on North Sheridan Road and stood in the parking lot and looked at it. The closing was 2 weeks later. He sat in an office on LaSalle Street with a stack of papers and a pen. His hand was shaking when he signed. Not a lot, just enough that he noticed. He signed his name on the line and became the owner of the room he had been escorted out of at 7 years old. The building didn't know that. The walls didn't remember. But he did. He named it Reed and Company. Not Reed Events. Not Reed Hospitality Group. Not anything that sounded bigger than it was. Just his name and the word company, because a company is something you build with other people, and he intended to build it with the people who had built him. The grand opening was on a Saturday in October. He had spent 3 months renovating. New paint, refinished floors, the old chandeliers cleaned and rewired. He kept the bones of the building because the bones were good. He changed what needed changing and left what didn't. The ballroom ceiling was still high. The windows were still tall. The stone was still white. But the room felt different now. Not because of the furniture or the lighting, because of who owned it. 40 people came to the opening. Not 400. 40. Friends from the neighborhood. A few vendors he'd been working with. 2 restaurant owners from the South Side who knew Mr. Odell. A woman from the SBA office who had processed his loan and wanted to see what it became. Terrell showed up 20 minutes late, in a jacket he clearly didn't wear often. He looked around the ballroom, nodded, and said, "All right, Tay, all right, that was enough." Mr. Odell came in his old suit. The one he wore to funerals and bank meetings, gray, a little tight in the shoulders. He walked through the room slowly, the way he walked through his own restaurant every night before closing. Checking, approving. He stopped at the bar and ran his hand along the counter. Then he looked at Tavion and gave a single nod. The kind of nod that carries 40 years of knowing what it takes to keep a door open. Gloria arrived before anyone else. She had taken the bus from South Halstead. She was wearing a blue dress Tavion had never seen before. She had bought it for this day. She stood at the front entrance. The front entrance. Not the kitchen. Not the back. Not the staff door that leads to the hallway where nobody sees you come in. She stood at the front door of the building her son owned, and she looked at it the way you look at something you spent 15 years making possible without ever knowing if it would happen. Tavion saw her from inside the lobby. He walked to the door. He opened it. They stood there looking at each other for a few seconds that held more weight than most conversations hold in an hour. Gloria looked past him. At the lobby. The front desk, the hallway leading to the ballroom, the chandelier, the polished floors. Then she looked back at her son. She said quietly, "This, your house now, baby," he said. "This is our house, Ma." She didn't cry. She had done enough of that. She nodded. Slow. The kind of nod that contains 15 years. The 3-chair table. The 2 jobs. The bus rides. The lemon cleaner. The night she sat at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning and her shoulders did something he had never seen them do. All of it in a single nod. She walked through the front door. She stood in the lobby of Reed and Company, and she looked at the wall behind the front desk where Tavion had hung a small sign. Not big. Not flashy. Not the kind of sign that's designed to impress investors. Just a wooden frame with 5 words painted in simple lettering. Every guest is expected. Every guest matters. She read it. She read it again. She didn't say anything about it. She didn't need to. She knew where those words came from. They came from a kitchen on South Halstead Street, and a 7-year-old boy sitting at a 3-chair table, and a sentence she had said to him on the worst night of his life that she had hoped, without ever being certain, he would carry. He had carried it. He had built a building around it. There was one more thing. A policy in the booking system that Tavion didn't advertise, didn't put on the website, didn't mention in sales meetings. If a community organization or a family with limited income wanted to host a birthday party for a child, the venue offered a sliding scale, all the way down to 0 if that's what it took. He never told anyone the reason. It just existed. The way some things just exist quietly because someone decided they would. The venue had been open for 8 months. 5 employees, 2 part-time, 3 full. Tavion handled most of the bookings himself. He answered the emails. He confirmed the deposits. He walked clients through the floor plan and the catering options and the sound system and the parking situation. It was not glamorous work. It was the kind of work that happens at a desk at 7 in the morning with a cup of coffee that goes cold because you forget to drink it. But it was his desk, his coffee, his building. And every booking that came through was proof that the math was holding. The email arrived on a Tuesday. He almost missed it. It was between a vendor invoice and a catering inquiry. The subject line read, "Private birthday event, November 18th. He opened it. The message was from an event coordinator, professional, concise. The client wanted to reserve the main ballroom for a private birthday dinner. 40 guests, sit-down service, floral centerpieces, a live trio for the first hour. The budget was $8,500. Good booking, clean money." He scrolled down to the client details. Event type, 40th birthday celebration. Guest of honor, Patricia Hargrove. Organized by Celeste Hargrove. He read the name. He read it again. Then he read it a third time, the way you read a word in a language you thought you'd forgotten, slowly. Then all at once, Hargrove, Patricia, Celeste. The 3 names sat on his screen in 12-point font. Professional, ordinary. The kind of names that appear in 1,000 booking forms across 1,000 venues every week. Except these were not ordinary names, not to him. He closed the laptop. He stood up from his desk. He walked out of the office, down the hallway, through the lobby, and into the ballroom. He stood in the center of the room. The same ceiling, the same windows, different furniture, different paint, different name on the building, but the same room. He stood on the spot where 15 years ago a woman in a nice dress had placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "Sweetheart, I think there's been a little mix-up with the guest list." He stood on the exact tile where he had looked at Celeste, and Celeste had looked away, and the kitchen door had swung shut behind him. He stood there for a while. Not long enough for anyone to notice, just long enough for the room to remind him of everything he already knew it would. He walked back to his office. He sat down. He opened the laptop. He looked at the booking form. He could decline it. No reason needed. Venue unavailable. Scheduling conflict. Any excuse would do. Nobody would ever know. Nobody would ever connect the dots between a 7-year-old boy at a birthday party and a 22-year-old venue owner on North Sheridan Road. He could make the name disappear from his screen and never think about it again. He looked at the wall behind his desk. The small sign. 5 words. Every guest is expected. Every guest matters. He heard his mother's voice. Not the words, just the tone. The steady, clear, no softening tone she had used at the 3-chair table on a night when her shoulders did something he had never seen them do. Every guest matters. Even this one. Especially this one. He clicked confirm. He typed the response. Professional. Courteous. Thank you for choosing Reed & Company. We look forward to hosting your event. Please find attached our standard agreement and deposit details. He signed it. Tavion Reed, owner. Reed & Company. He pressed send. Then he closed the laptop again and sat there for another minute. Just one. Then he got up and went to check the kitchen inventory because there was work to do, and the work did not stop for the past. He arrived at 6 in the morning on November 18th, 3 hours before the setup crew. He walked through the ballroom alone. He checked every table, every chair, every place setting. He adjusted a centerpiece that was off by an inch. He tested the lighting 3 times until the warmth was right. He tasted the appetizer samples the caterer had left in the kitchen. He checked the sound levels on the trio's speakers. He polished a water spot off the main bar that nobody would have noticed. He prepared this event more carefully than any event he had ever hosted. Not because he wanted to prove something. Not because he wanted to show the Hargroves what he had built. He prepared it this way because he could not do it any other way. Because the sign on the wall said what it said. Because his mother had told him what she had told him. Because Mr. Odell had taught him that every person who walks through the door is spending something they worked for, and you respect that always. The Hargroves arrived at 7:15. Celeste came in first. She was 23 now, confident stride, professional in the way that people are when they've been raised to expect that rooms will accommodate them. She wore a dark green dress and carried a folder with the seating chart. Behind her, Patricia, older than the version Tavion had carried in his memory for 15 years, smaller. When you're 7, every adult is a giant. When you're 22 and you own the building they're walking into, the proportions change. Tavion stood at the entrance to the ballroom. He stood there because that's where he stood for every event. He greeted every client the same way. He extended his hand to Celeste. He said, "Welcome to Reed & Company. Everything's set up for you. If you need anything at all, my team and I are right here." Celeste shook his hand, looked at him for 1 second. The kind of look you give the manager of a venue you've hired. Polite, brief, functional. She said, "Thank you." She walked into the ballroom. Patricia was behind her. She reached out and shook his hand. Her grip was lighter than Celeste's. She looked at him, longer than 1 second. Something moved behind her eyes. Not recognition. Not yet. Something more like discomfort. The way you feel when you walk into a room and something about it is familiar, but you can't place why, she said. "Lovely space," he said. "Thank you, ma'am. Enjoy the evening." She walked past him. The event ran for 4 hours. Tavion managed from the edges. Quiet, professional, invisible, in the way that good hospitality is invisible. The food went out on time. The trio played at the right volume. The speeches happened without microphone issues. The cake was brought out at exactly 9:15, which was what Celeste had requested. The guests complimented the room, the lighting, the service. They used words like elegant and warm and thoughtful. The kind of words people use when a space has been designed to make them feel something without knowing exactly what or why. During the second course, Tavion was clearing a side table near the back of the room when he noticed a napkin on the floor beneath Patricia's chair. He picked it up. He folded it. Not a quick fold, a proper fold. The triangle that Mr. Odell had taught him 9 years ago at a restaurant on MLK Boulevard. He set it on the table beside Patricia's place setting. She was in the middle of a conversation with the woman next to her. She glanced down at the napkin. Then she looked up at him. This time, the look was longer, 3 seconds, maybe 4. He nodded politely and moved on. She watched him walk away. He could feel it. He didn't turn around. The party ended at 11. The guests filtered out in small groups, the way guests always do, slowly, reluctantly, taking their time because the room had been good to them. Celeste was the last one in the ballroom. She found Tavion in the lobby. He was at the front desk, closing out the event file. She said, "I just want to say this was incredible. My mom had the best time. Your team was flawless." She paused. "Can I get your card? I have friends who are always looking for venues." He reached into the holder on the desk. He handed her a card. She took it. She looked at it. Simple design, black text on cream stock. It read, "Tavion Reed, owner, Reed & Company." She read it. Her eyes moved over the name, Tavion Reed. She stopped. Her thumb was still on the card. She didn't move for a moment. Not a long moment, but long enough. He watched her face do something. Not all at once, not a sudden shift. It was gradual, the way a window fogs when the temperature changes. She looked at the card, then she looked at him. Then she looked at the card again. Something was connecting. A name, a neighborhood. A woman who cleaned the house on the North Shore. A woman who had a son named. She said Reed. She said it slowly. "Did your mother? Did she work for?" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The sentence knew where it was going, even if her voice couldn't get there. Tavion didn't help her finish it. He stood still. He waited. The lobby was quiet. The chandelier above them hummed faintly the way old wiring does in old buildings. The building that he owned. The building with his name on the sign outside. Celeste looked at him. She said very quietly, "Tavion, The birthday party. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. The kind of statement that lands in a room and changes the air pressure. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. They stood in the lobby of Reed and Company, the same building where 15 years earlier a woman had walked a 7-year-old boy out through the kitchen because she had decided he didn't belong in the ballroom. The same lobby, the same hallway, except now his name was on the wall. His name was on the card in her hand. His name was on the deed filed at the county recorder's office on the 4th floor of the Daily Center. Celeste opened her mouth. She was going to say something. Maybe an apology. Maybe an explanation. Maybe something in between that wouldn't have been enough either way. He could see it forming. The breath before the words. He spoke first. Quiet. Steady. No anger. No bitterness. No triumph. Just a man standing in his own building speaking to a guest. He said, "I hope your mom had a good birthday, Celeste. That's what tonight was for." That was all he said. He didn't add to it. He didn't explain. He didn't gesture at the room, or the sign, or the card, or the 15 years between this moment and the one they were both thinking about. He just said what he said. And what he said was hospitality. Actual hospitality. The kind that doesn't depend on whether the guest deserves it. The kind that exists because the person offering it has decided what kind of room they're going to run. Period. Celeste looked at him. Then she looked around the lobby. At the polished floors, the chandelier, the sign on the wall. Every guest is expected. Every guest matters. She looked at the ballroom behind her where her mother had just spent 4 hours being served impeccably by the son of the woman she had fired after walking him out through the kitchen door. The fact of it was heavier than any words. The fact of it filled the room the way facts do when they are too large to argue with. She said Tavion won. He shook his head. Gently. Not dismissive. Just done. He said, "Have a good night." She stood there for another moment. Then she nodded. She put the card in her purse. She walked out through the front door. The front door. The same door her mother had walked through 4 hours ago. The same door Tavion had been denied 15 years earlier. He watched her leave. Then he turned off the lobby lights and went to check on the cleaning crew in the ballroom. There was work to do. There was always work to do. And the work did not wait for the past to finish speaking. 2 weeks after the party, a letter arrived at Reed and Company. Not an email, a letter, handwritten. The envelope had no return address, but the postmark was from the North Shore. Tavion opened it at his desk. The handwriting was neat, careful. The kind of handwriting that belongs to someone who rewrote the letter more than once before sending it. It was from Celeste. It was short, 4 sentences. She said she remembered the backyard, and the swing set, and the oak tree. She said she remembered the drawing on the card. She said she was sorry. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not ask for anything at all. She just said what she said and signed her name. Tavion read it. He read it again. Then he folded it along its original creases and put it in the top drawer of his desk. He did not write back. Not because he was angry. Not because the letter didn't matter. He just didn't need to. Some letters are not written to start a conversation. They are written to close a distance that can't actually be closed, and the writing of them is the point. Patricia did not write. Patricia did not call. Patricia did not send anything. Some people apologize. Some people just go quiet. Patricia went quiet. That was all there was to say about it. That was all there would ever be to say about it. 6 months later, Reed and Company had 11 employees. The books were in order. The venue wasn't making anyone rich, but it was making something real. Steady bookings. Repeat clients. A reputation that was growing the way good reputations grow. Slowly, by word of mouth, by the specific recommendation of someone who had been there and felt something they couldn't quite name but wanted to feel again. Tavion started a program. He called it The Open Door. Once a month, Reed and Company hosted a birthday party for a child from a family that couldn't afford one. Full setup, decorations, cake, music, a table for gifts. The whole room. Free. He didn't put it on the website. He didn't market it. He connected with 2 community centers on the south side, and one church on West Madison and told them to send families his way. The name came to him without thinking about it: the open door. Because the opposite of what had happened to him was a door that stayed open. And if he couldn't change the past, he could build a room where the past couldn't repeat itself. The gifts at the open door parties were wrapped in bright paper, every single one, glossy, colorful, with ribbons and bows. Tavian made sure of that. He ordered the wrapping paper himself. He stocked it in the supply closet next to the napkins and the tablecloths. He used newspaper for his own things. Always had. Still did. That was his. That was the choice a 9-year-old boy had made at a kitchen table on South Halsted Street. But he never used it for anyone else's child. He made sure no child who walked through his door ever had to explain why their gift looked different from everyone else's. On his desk in a simple frame there was a card. Not the card he had drawn for Celeste. That one was gone. Lost on a gift table 15 years ago, buried under glossy bags, probably thrown away before the party was over. This was a different card. The one he had picked up off a ballroom floor at 1 in the morning on a Wednesday in November when he was 21 and wondering if any of it was worth it. A crayon drawing. 2 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. It sat on his desk where he could see it every day. Not because it was his, because it reminded him why he was here. Gloria came by every Sunday. She sat at the corner table in the lobby, the one near the window. She drank her coffee and looked out at North Sheridan Road and didn't say much. She didn't need to. She had said what she needed to say a long time ago at a 3-chair table on South Halsted Street, and the building she was sitting in was the proof that it had landed. Mr. Odell came to the first open-door party. He wore the gray suit. He stood near the back of the ballroom and watched Tavian greet the families as they came in. Watched him kneel down and ask a little girl her name. Watched him pull out a chair for a mother who looked like she hadn't sat down in a long time. Mr. Odell looked across the room at Gloria. She was standing near the door. He walked over to her. He said, "You raised that boy right." Gloria watched her son straighten a napkin on a table. She said, "He raised himself. I just made sure he didn't stop." Some people who hear this story will say Tavian should have turned the booking down, should have looked Patricia Hargrove in the eye and told her exactly what she did to a 7-year-old boy in that ballroom 15 years ago. Should have named it. Should have made her sit with it. Others will say what he did was harder. That serving someone with excellence when you have every reason not to is not weakness. It's not forgiveness either. It's a decision about who you are made in real time, under pressure and held. That the refusal to let the past define the present is its own kind of power, the quiet kind, the kind you have to earn. And then there is a third question, about Celeste. She was 8 years old. She looked away. She put the card down. She didn't say anything when her mother walked Tavian out through the kitchen. Was she wrong? She was a child. She was responding to a system she had been born into. She didn't build the walls of that room, she just lived inside them. At what age does the responsibility begin? At what point does the child who looked away become the adult who has to answer for it? That question doesn't have one answer. It has yours. Now, before you go, I want to step out of the story for a moment, because I think it matters. This story is fictional. The characters, the venue, the names, none of it happened exactly this way, but the feeling behind it did. The feeling of walking into a room and knowing before anyone says a word that you are not supposed to be there. The feeling of being small in a space designed for people who are not you. That is real. That has happened to someone listening to this right now. Maybe to you. Maybe to your child. Maybe to someone you love. I wrote this because I believe that hospitality is not a business term. It's a human one. It means making someone feel like they belong. In a room, at a table, in a conversation, in a life. And I believe the rooms we build, literal or otherwise, should have doors that stay open. For everyone, regardless of what they're carrying when they walk in. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe. New stories every week. See you in the next one.